Kicking off our list at number 10. Athens, Greece. Of course, Athens is the largest city in Greece, and of course, if the Olympics are any indication, Athens is quite old. It's been around for a while. People have been hucking javelins for quite a few years. One of the oldest cities in the world, being inhabited for around 7,000 years. Yeah, not bad. It was once a powerful city-state and the birthplace of democracy, which is a little less exciting than the Olympics, but still rather cool. Exploring the city today can be quite exciting. Some ancient cities are in rough areas of the world, but to visit Greece, learn about ancient democracy and ancient Olympics, then go swim in beautiful water, it's amazing. It's the best trip ever. Ancient empires like the Romans, Byzantine, and the Ottomans, they also settled in this ancient city as well, so a lot of history to go around. Ancient Greeks also used to work out naked. That's just a fun fact that I wanted to share with the world. The word gymnasium translates to the Greek term gymnasion, which meant school for naked exercise. So I ask, what would you prefer? Xavier's school for gifted youngsters or Nico's school for naked exercise? It's 50-50. Number 9. Ray, Iran. Ray is the oldest city in the province and one of the oldest cities on the planet, with evidence of inhabitants going back as far as 6,000 BC. It's like 8,000 years ago. I can't even fathom that. The Avesta are these ancient scriptures of Zoroastrianism. Now, Arabs took control of the city in 641 AD, and it was almost destroyed by the Mongols later in 1220. Now, somehow, after all of that, there's still historical monuments that still stand to this day. And that includes the 12th century Tigral Tower and an excavation site where 7,000-year-old artifacts were initially discovered. That's so old. Number 8. Fayum, Egypt. We kicked our list off with ancient Greece, so it's only a matter of time before we get into some ancient Egyptian goodness. The oldest city in Egypt, and one of the oldest in Africa, is the city Fayum. Fayum was founded around 4000 BC, and it's located 62 miles southwest of Cairo. Now, Fayum is in a historical spot. It's located in an area that was once the ancient city of Crocodilopolis, whose inhabitants once worshipped a sacred crocodile named Pashukos. How amazing is that? I feel like the pyramids and the tombs in Cairo are all the talk, but Fayum? It's an ancient relic. Go there instead. Today, the Fayum is home to markets, mosques, and baths. Worth a visit if you're doing a big trip. Don't forget about sacred crocodiles when planning your itinerary. Pyramids, then crocodiles. 1, 2, boom. Number 7. Helike, Turkey. According to Greek legend, Helike was a place that was destroyed by Poseidon himself, aka the god of the sea, storms, earthquakes, and horses. See, what happened was he was upset because those who resided in Helike were refusing to give their statue of Poseidon, or even a copy of it, to the Ionian colonists in Asia Minor, which is now modern-day Turkey. Our modern archaeology, along with ancient sources, have been able to deduce that an earthquake in 373 BC caused the ground beneath the entire city to completely liquefy, which is, well, that's horrifying. And then from here on, a tsunami then hit and totally engulfed the city, and it's said that this all happened in the span of 1 or 2 hours, which sadly left no survivors. In the 1980s and 1990s, under the direction of archaeologist Dora Katsanapopoulou and physicist Steven Suter, a more accurate location of where Helike may be came to light in 2001, and the ancient city was finally located. Number 6. Caral, Peru. An American history professor named Paul Cossack was absolutely fascinated by ancient settlements, as many of us are. But this passion led him to devoting much of his time to studying in Peru, which has, well, such an incredibly rich history already. In 1948, while in Peru, Paul made the discovery that he's been waiting for his entire life. He came across the dry remains of an ancient city. The remains were carbon dated and placed back to around 5,000 years old. The city of Caral was once home to around 3,000 inhabitants pre-Inca. This was already a thriving location while the pyramids were being built. That's how old the settlement is. It appeared to be quite a peaceful place, as there were no obvious signs of battles or weapons, but among the remains were homes, plazas, temples, and an amphitheater, so pretty nice stuff, all things considered. It's said the city was abandoned in 2000 BC, and in 2009 AD, it was made a World Heritage Site. Number 5. Machu Picchu, Peru. For this one, we have another one of the most famous and well-known lost cities, Machu Picchu. This site was built over 500 years ago, and it was once known as the lost city of the Inca, until the modern discovery of it in 1911 by archaeologist Hiram Bingham changed the game. Him and his team actually stumbled upon an ancient city almost accidentally. They were looking for another ancient city, and then they found another one. That's kind of a win. I don't know, or a loss? Not really sure. Machu Picchu was built by the incredible Incas who have surprised us in our modern times. Many times with their unbelievable technology or abilities that they had all those years ago, somehow we're still uncovering secrets. It's believed that this place may have been built for the Inca emperor as a sort of estate almost. See, Machu Picchu was built in 1450, but it was abandoned about a century later at the time of the Spanish conquest. And as of 2007, it has been voted one of the new 7 wonders of the world, and work continues to be done on it to maintain and restore this wonderful location. Number 4. Pompeii, Italy. One of the most famous lost cities of all time, the Roman city of Pompeii, was sadly destroyed in 79 AD when the eruption of Mount Vesuvius just went off and then volcanic ash was then strewn about the city. It's horrible. It's one of the worst things I can think of. Fast forward all the way to 1748 when the Duke of Naples had a summer palace built just 24 kilometers south of Naples on Italy's west coast. Through the construction, as those working on the palace began to dig, they started to come across buildings and streets, and from here on, once news spread, people began to flock into the area, and it was realized what had been uncovered was a lost city, the lost city of Pompeii. Again, you just find an entire city, like, hey, I found a road under here. What's this about? Fascinating. Throughout the Victorian times, people would come and see as more of this town was uncovered, and eventually they found an amphitheater, a forum, houses, and shops. Everything you'd expect a town to have, really. This one was just, covered in hot lava, so untouched for a little bit. Number 3, Skara Brae. This is an area that is located in Scotland, and it was found in an exceptionally surprising way. In 1850, there was this huge storm that hit Scotland, and it was so bad that around 200 people passed away from it. It was terrible. Now, the next day, however, once the storm had eventually passed, residents of the Orkney Isles began to notice that part of a cliff had dislodged, but it uncovered a sort of hidden settlement almost, which is insane. It's like some Zelda temple. We're like, what is this in this isle? Tests were able to date this site back from 3200 BC to 2200 BC, and it was shown to have been inhabited for around 600 years. There were round stone homes there, and the roofs were made of whalebone and peat. It was pretty creative. The design of this little city suggested that there wasn't a hierarchy, but rather a group of people living peacefully as farmers, or herdsmen, or traders, or anything not involving battle. You know what I mean? While the site is small, it's pretty mighty. The houses are in quite great shape for the amount of time that has passed. This little settlement in Europe is the most complete Neolithic village, and while it's older than Stonehenge and the Great Pyramids, it's been called the Scottish Pompeii because of how well preserved it is. Number 2, Sigiriya. In 1831, it is said that Major Jonathan Forbes of the 78th Highlanders of the British Army was on horseback, and on his way back from a journey, that's when he spotted the bush-covered summit of Sigiriya. In the 1890s, archaeological work slowly began on the site, but Harry Charles Purvis Bell, way too long of a name, was really the person who began to start large-scale work on this area. The Cultural Triangle Project, which was launched by the government of Sri Lanka, began to really focus their attention on Sigiriya in 1982, and for the first time, archaeological work began on the entire city. It took a little while, but we got there. Basically, the city consists of an ancient citadel that was built by King Kashyapa in the 5th century. There's an upper palace on the top of the rock and a mid-level terraces. There are moats and walls and gardens that extend out from the base of the rock as well. The location once served as a palace and fortress, but it was abandoned after the king's death. And finally, number 1, Mohenjo-Daro. This is a location whose name is said to roughly translate to a mound of the dead's men. This is one of the world's oldest urban settlements, as it was found and built somewhere around 2600 to 2500 BC. And what is now Pakistan. But it was abandoned as the civilization that called this place home declined. For almost 4,000 years, this site was seemingly forgotten about, and the remains of it were undocumented until an officer of the Archaeological Survey of India, R.D. Banerjee, visited the site in 1920 and found a flint scraper, which then convinced him of the site's rich history. And from here, excavations of the site began, and as the 1980s kicked off, it was named a World Heritage Site officially.
Number 10. Shangri-La. First described in writing by English author James Hilton, Shangri-La is a utopia nestled in a valley in the western end of the Kunlun Mountains, which has become synonymous with an earthly paradise. It is said that the people who lived there were almost immortal, living hundreds of years longer than normal people and aging very slowly. Hilton was the first to call it by this name, but ancient Tibetan scriptures mention 7 such places, which were created to be sacred places of refuge for Buddhists in times of strife. The name seems to come from Shang, a district in southern Tibet, Ri, the Tibetan word for mountain, and La, meaning pass. Therefore, Shang Mountain Pass is believed to be the place where the mythological city exists, but that hasn't stopped other places from claiming the title. In 2001, a county on the northwestern part of the Yunnan province in China renamed themselves Shangri-La County, though many dispute their claim, since it seems that Hilton actually traveled to a place called the Hunza Valley, located close to the China-Pakistan border, which is an isolated green valley surrounded by mountains enclosed on the western end of the Himalayas, so it fits the description pretty well. But the people there actually seem to age faster due to increased ultraviolet radiation on the higher altitude areas, so the jury's still out on that one. Before we get to number 9, folks, be sure to hit those like and subscribe buttons. It helps us out so that we can keep bringing you the most amazing videos. Number 9, California. Now, I know what you're thinking. Connor, if California isn't real, then where does Mickey live? Well, I'm not talking about that California. I'm talking about the place the state was named after. In a Spanish novel published in 1510, a place akin to the Garden of Eden or Atlantis was described by the author as a mysterious island, quote, to the right hand of the Indies, entirely populated by women and had no metal other than gold on it. It was ruled by Queen Khalifa, which is where the island got its name, California. When Spanish explorer Hernan Cortez came to North America, he thought that he'd found the mythological place off of the mainland of America, because there appeared to be an island, when really it was only the bottom peninsula of the state, across the Sea of Cortez, which was named after himself. But Cortez was obsessed with the story, and since this island was technically to the right of the Indies and had so much gold on it, you can see how the name came to mind, and thus California was found. Well, they explored north and realized that it was not in fact an island. That didn't stop Cortez and others from drawing it as one on maps for hundreds and hundreds of years. YouTuber Johnny Harris actually has a fantastic video all about that if you want to hear more. But for now, the location of the storybook version of California still remains a mystery. Number 8. Thule. Stepping into Norse mythology, which has some of my favorite stories, Thule is a cold and peaceful place where they had months with no sunlight, said to be located between Scandinavia and Iceland. The ancient Greek explorer Pytheas was the first to write about Thule during his travels around 330 BC. He was also one of the first to describe the effects of the moon on the tides and to estimate the length of the British coastline, and was a specialist in longitude and latitude. Some scholars believe that Thule is just another name for what is now called Norway, while others think that it is truly a lost island off the coast of Iceland. The Germanic tribes in Thule allegedly showed Pytheas around their homeland and explained that in the winter the sun did not rise at all, but in the summer there was no night. Number 7. Camelot. Known as the court and castle where King Arthur reigned, Camelot first appeared in 12th century texts and eventually became synonymous with Arthur and the world that surrounded his stories. Some people believe that the place is entirely fictional, but many more still have attributed it to other places in Great Britain where castles still remain standing. Debate has been going on since the 15th century about the location of the beautiful capital of Arthur's kingdom, and we may never know the true location where Merlin and the Knights of the Round Table called their home. Number 6. Lyonesse. Sticking in Arthurian legend, Lyonesse was the home of the hero Tristan and was said to have been lost to the sea. The story of Tristan and Iseult sees the two traveling across the kingdom from Ireland to Cornwall to deliver Iseult to Tristan's uncle for marriage, but the two unknowingly drink a love potion and fall for each other, having to endure many battles to save their love. The kingdom was supposedly located on the Isles of Scilly, and the 140 islands that exist there now are apparently just the hilltops of the now sunken kingdom off the coast of Cornwall. There is evidence to suggest that water levels were remarkably lower at the time, and that in the last 3,000 years there have been enough submergence that this lost kingdom could still exist in the water below. If they ever made a movie about Tristan, I wonder if they'd get Liam Neeson to play the Lyonessian. Number 5. Aztlan. The Aztecs were one of the most powerful civilizations to emerge from the ancient Americas, and so much about them has been lost to time and to conquerors wiping out their history. While much is known about their later days as a civilization, we know very little about their origins. Allegedly, the mysterious island of Aztlan is where the Aztec people came together to create their society before migrating to the Valley of Mexico. According to legend, there were 7 tribes who lived in 7 caves near the island, and in order to maintain peace between their peoples, they came together and moved to Aztlan, which means the land to the north, the land from whence we, the Aztecs, came. Since it was so long ago, the island could have been in an area that is no longer submerged in water, and searches for it have taken place from the bottom of Mexico all the way up to Utah, but it's yet to be found. Some think it's pure myth, while others hold out hope that it will be discovered. Number 4. Julfar. Home to the legendary Sinbad the Sailor, Julfar is one of the most famous cities of Arabia that has been lost to the desert. Located near the now super modern Dubai, Julfar was the hub for the entirety of the southern Arabic trade in the Middle Ages, because unlike other lost desert cities, Julfar was a bustling port town. Now here's the cool part, this city has actually been found. In the 1960s, archaeologists discovered signs of settlement and civilization dating all the way back to the 6th century, and have since found countless residences, shops, and items which have helped us unearth the mysteries of this lost city. This find was very important because it helps historians fill out the timeline of the area, showing how neighboring towns received goods and made trades, as there were few port towns described or found before. Number 3. El Dorado. The very idea of a city made entirely of gold is enough to fascinate people. Add in the fact that the place has been lost and is awaiting a brave explorer to discover it, now you've got a legend. The origins of the tale come from the Muisca tribe in Colombia, and El Dorado doesn't actually refer to a city, but to the king at the center of the city or the society. The Muisca tribe had an affinity for golden treasures and often used them in rituals for their gods, and one of their most important rituals was conducted when they got a new king. The king would be stripped naked, covered in gold dust, and set on a raft adorned with gold and jewels to the middle of Lake Guatavita. The townspeople would then throw golden coins and trinkets into the lake to appease the gods, and the king would wash the dust off of himself in the lake, after which he was known as the Gilded One, or El Dorado. In 1545, conquistadors attempted to drain the lake to find the lost treasures and found gold along the edges of the lake, proving their theory. They used bucket chains to drain as much as they could, but they couldn't reach the center. And in 1580, a businessman tried to drain it again, and while lowering the water level and finding treasure along the edges, he too couldn't reach the center. And in 1965, the country of Colombia named Lake Guatavita a protected area, making it illegal to do any more searching. It is estimated that at the center of the lake lies what could amount to billions of dollars in ancient gold relics, but we will never know for sure. Number 2. Kalahari. In 1885, a Canadian entertainer and adventurer named Guillermo Farini, also known as the Great Farini, became one of the first Westerners to cross the unexplored and treacherous Kalahari Desert in southern Africa. When he returned to Canada, he wrote a paper and showed photographs of ruins he discovered which proved the existence of a civilization which had been lost to the desert sands. In his paper, he wrote, "We camped near the foot of it, beside a broken line of stone which looked like the Chinese wall after an earthquake, and which, on examination, proved to be the ruins of quite an extensive structure, in some places buried beneath the sand, but in others fully exposed to view." He continued on to say, "We traced the remains for nearly a mile, mostly a heap of huge stones, but all flat-sided, and here and there the cement perfectly plainly visible between the layers. Many expeditions have been conducted to find the lost city, including 12 by the grandparents of none other than Elon Musk, who wants to steer away from ancient civilizations and start a new one on Mars." A 2016 documentary series used aerial photography and radar in conjunction with Farini's descriptions and found some man-made ruins near an oasis in the Kalahari. More exploration is needed, but it's very possible that we have found this lost city. And finally, we reach our number 1, which is of course Atlantis. Arguably the most famous lost city, Atlantis has captured the imagination of people from around the world since it was first mentioned in writing by the Greek philosopher Plato in 360 BC. It is said that the island was a place of extremely advanced technology and an unmatched navy, but it was lost in one terrible night of fire and earthquakes and sank into the sea. Since then, there has always been someone looking for the lost city to prove it's real, and one of the most promising expeditions was made by Canadian-Israeli journalist and investigative archaeologist Simcha Yakubovich, who has made many documentaries and discoveries about ancient civilizations. He partnered with film director James Cameron and used Plato's text and new emerging technology to find some incredible evidence on the sea floor. 6 Bronze Age stone anchors off of the coast of Spain in the Strait of Gibraltar, one of the areas believed to be the resting place of Atlantis. One of the other main theories is that the Atlanteans were actually the Minoan civilization on the island of Santorini, Greece. Around 3,600 years ago, the Thera eruption occurred and the island shattered, and it, as well as the Minoans on it, were lost to the sea. With the location and the way the island was lost being so similar to Plato's descriptions, this seems like a great candidate for the lost city of Atlantis.
Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have the Palawan Highlands. We have talked about Palawan Island before, but maybe not in the context of the highlands that are located there. The highlands are located on the isolated corner of the island, and during a scientific journey there in 2007, botanists found a ton of flora that hasn't yet been seen anywhere else on Earth. One of the most astonishing discoveries was that of a plant that kind of looks like a pitcher. This plant is so large and so carnivorous that it snacks on rodents and even small monkeys, which is just crazy to even think about. Some of the other plants found here include pink ferns and blue mushrooms. In our number 9 spot today, we have Sima Humboldt. Sima Humboldt is a huge sinkhole that is located in Venezuela. Sinkholes certainly are very interesting, but not necessarily never before seen, so you might be wondering what's going on with this one that makes it necessary to put on this list. Well, firstly, it's huge. Its volume is around 18 million cubic meters. The second reason is because of its location. This sinkhole is located on a tepu, which is like a tabletop mountain, and this sinkhole is located on the only forested tepu. And finally, because of the size of it, Sima Humboldt features its own ecosystem located at the bottom, where many new plants and animal species have been discovered. Apparently, locals of the area believe the sinkhole is actually a place of evil, so while it looks very cool and actually quite beautiful, maybe something scarier is lurking around. In our number 8 spot today, we have Lake Vostok. Many of us have heard of Atlantis, but have you heard of Lake Vostok? Okay, there's probably no underwater city, so maybe that was an exaggeration, but it's still really cool. This lake is located in Antarctica and is so huge, it's one of the largest lakes in the entire world. The lake not only has a large surface area, but it's actually quite deep, which also adds to the volume of the lake. So here's the thing about this lake though. It is covered by ice, and not just any ice, but by the East Antarctic ice sheet, which is the largest ice sheet in the world. This subglacial lake has ice so thick that we don't know a lot about what lies beneath it, and the ice has been there for millions of years. But when the first samples of the actual lake water were taken, it became apparent that there may be species in the lake that we know absolutely nothing about. In our number 7 spot today, we have Mount Roraima. This mountain features something that we just talked about a little bit on this list, and that is how the top of it is flat like a tabletop. This mountain sits on the border of Venezuela, Guyana, and Brazil, and the other tabletop mountains that are found in this park along with this one are said to be some of the oldest geological formations on Earth, dating back to around 2 billion years ago. This mountain is the highest in the area and has rain almost every single day. The top is mostly sandstone with just a few bushes and algae, but most of the species found here are very much unique to the area. In our number 6 spot today, we have the Mobile Cave. This cave is located in Romania, just a few kilometers from the coast of the Black Sea, and was first discovered in 1986. This cave has been isolated from the outside world for millions of years, and basically everything that goes on inside of it is different than what we are used to. The cave life is not based on photosynthesis, and rather chemosynthesis. The level of oxygen in the cave is around a third of what is normally found in the atmosphere, and of the 48 species found in the cave, 33 of them were endemic. This cave looks absolutely terrifying, but thank goodness for the brave scientists who don't let that get in their way, because as scary as it looks, it is just as, if not more, amazing to be able to hear about exactly what this cave holds. In our number 5 spot today, we have the Melville Range. This mountain range is found on Cape Melville, which is a part of northeastern Australia's Cape York Peninsula, and although the range isn't as huge as many others we have on Earth, it is the home to an isolated rainforest that wasn't really known about until extremely recently. The forest is only accessible by helicopter, and since its first true exploration by scientists in 2013, there has been at least 3 new species of animals already discovered. There has also been endemic plant life found in the range as well. The rocky environment is most certainly a unique feature in this rainforest and is definitely a key feature of why some of the endemic species that live there are the way that they are. It is really cool to be able to see just how this landscape and environment shaped these animals that we are just now getting to know more about. In our number 4 spot today, we have Mount Bosavi. This mountain is located in the Southern Highlands province of Papua New Guinea, but it is actually the collapsed cone of an extinct volcano. The volcano actually collapsed to create a crater that is around 4 kilometers wide and 1 kilometer deep. There isn't a ton that is known about the area, but in 2009, an international team of scientists went down there on an expedition that was entirely filmed by the BBC Natural History Unit. It is believed that the crater was created around 200,000 years ago, and during the crew's time researching the area, there were around 40 new species that were uncovered, as the creator has its very own fascinating isolated ecosystem. Who knows what more may be down there just waiting for us to uncover. In our number 3 spot today, we have the Sun Dune Cave. This cave is located in Vietnam and is the largest cave in the world. The name means the mountain river cave, and it was created somewhere between 2 to 5 million years ago from river water eroding away the limestone. In some areas of the cave, the ceiling collapsed, which has created skylights. These areas have allowed many plants and trees to grow and has definitely increased the vegetation. The cave is around 9 kilometers long and is home to the tallest known stalagmites in the world, with these mineral deposits getting up to around 70 meters tall. There was a plan to install a cable car through the cave to create a tourist attraction, but thankfully those plans were cancelled due to the potential harm that it would cause the environment, which I think most of us can agree was for the best. In our number 2 spot today, we have the Challenger Deep. The Challenger Deep is the deepest known point in our ocean at around 10,900 meters deep. It is located in the Pacific Ocean in the southern part of Mariana Trench, and because of its location, lack of light, and immense pressure, it hasn't been explored very much. The extreme environment has certainly set up for there to be a whole host of species that we know absolutely nothing about, but it is not an area that can be easily explored by humans. The Challenger Deep has only been visited 4 times and only for short periods of time, so there is so much more that is waiting to be uncovered at this deep, dark part of our ocean. In our number 1 spot today, we have East Scotia Ridge. In the Southern Ocean, about 2,400 meters down, you'll find this biological community or habitat that was first discovered in 2012. It is dark down there, but it is also hot, as it is being warmed by hydrothermal vents, and it can reach temperatures of up to 382 degrees Celsius, which is insane. Because of this dark, hot environment, of course we are going to find a whole host of new species that were previously unknown to us. Some of these species include a new kind of albino octopus, and also albino hairy lobster that's referred to as a yeti lobster, and apparently even a crab that uses its hair to grow a bacteria that detoxifies the water. Sometimes science is just really cool. Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have Iram of the Pillars. This place is also known as Atlantis of the Sands, and it is a lost city or area that is spoken of in the Quran. In the Quran, it is said to be a place that is full of lofty buildings, and it was populated by a group known as Ad. The group had turned away from Allah, so the prophet Hud was sent to summon them back. The people did not listen or obey, and as a result, it is said that they were punished with a sandstorm being sent to the area for 7 days and 7 nights. In the end, the city is said to have vanished beneath the sands as if it never existed. In the 1990s, a team which was led by Nicholas Clapp, who is an amateur archaeologist and filmmaker, announced that they had found this lost city. It is said that this was done using NASA's remote sensing satellites, ground penetrating radar, and images taken by the Space Shuttle Challenger. These tools gave them the opportunity to see old camel trade routes and where they all once converged. This point is a well-known area, and once excavated, it is said to have revealed the area known as the Iram of the Pillars. In our number 9 spot today, we have Helic. According to Greek legend, Helic was a place that was destroyed by Poseidon, the god of the sea, storms, earthquakes, and horses. He was upset because those who resided in Helic were refusing to give their statue of Poseidon or even give a copy of it to the Ionian colonists in Asia Minor, which is now modern Turkey. Our modern archaeology, along with ancient sources, have been able to deduce that an earthquake in 373 BC caused the ground beneath the entire city to completely liquefy. From here, a tsunami then hit and totally engulfed the city, and it is said that this all happened in the span of an hour or so, which left no survivors. In the 1980s and 1990s, under the direction of an archaeologist named Dora Katsonopoulou and physicist Steven Suter, a more accurate location for where Helic may be came to light, and in 2001 the ancient city was located. Every summer, excavations continue to be carried out, and every year we learn more about this area and the secrets it holds that come all the way from prehistoric times. In our number 8 spot today, we have Mohenjo-Daro. This is a location whose name is said to roughly translate to, quote, Mound of the Dead Men. This is one of the world's oldest urban settlements, as it was found and built somewhere around 2600 to 2500 BC in what is now Pakistan, but it was abandoned in the 19th century BC as the civilization that called this place home declined. For almost 4,000 years, the site was seemingly forgotten about, and the remains of it were undocumented until an officer of the Archaeological Survey of India, R.D. Banerjee, visited the site in 1920 and found a flint scraper which convinced him of the site's history. From here, excavations of the site began, and as of the 1980s, it was named a World Heritage Site. In our number 7 spot today, we have Heraklion. Also known as Thonis to the Egyptians, this was an ancient city that was located near the mouth of the Nile River. Greek legend says that this was the city where Hercules took the first steps into Africa, as well as the place where Paris hid Helen before the Trojan War began. This is all to say that, to legend, this city was super important, but aside from the legend, no one knew where this place was or how to find it. Well, just over 2,000 years ago, it turns out that either an earthquake, a tsunami, or a combination of the two hit the city and submerged it underwater. It used to be believed that this place and Thonis were two separate places, and that both were located on what is now Egyptian mainland, but neither of those things turned out to be true. In reality, in 1999, after 5 years of searching, archaeologist Frank Gaudio located the ruins of the city underwater as they had been submerged in the ocean. Since then, excavations and explorations of the ancient city have taken place, and it was stocked full of some incredibly cool treasures from thousands of years ago. In 2010, a type of ancient Nile riverboat was found here, and even just a few months ago in August of 2021, it was announced that wicker baskets that contained fruits of the dome palm tree as well as grape seeds that date back to the early 4th century BC had been found among the ruins. In our number 6 spot today we have Sigiriya. In 1831, it is said that Major Jonathan Forbes of the 78th Highlanders of the British Army was on horseback and on his way back from a journey when he spotted the bush-covered summit of Sigiriya. In the 1890s, archaeological work slowly began on the site, but Harry Charles Purvis Bell was really the person who began to start large-scale work on the area. The Cultural Triangle Project, which was launched by the government of Sri Lanka, began to really focus their attention to the area in 1982, and for the first time archaeological work began on the entire city. Basically, the city consists of an ancient citadel that was built by King Kashyapa in the 5th century. There is an upper palace on the top of the rock and mid-level terraces. There are moats and walls and gardens that extend out from the base of the rock. The location once served as a palace and a fortress, but it was abandoned after the king's death. Not only is this now a World Heritage Site, but it is also one of the best preserved examples of ancient urban planning. In our number 5 spot today we have Taxila. This location was established in 600 BC and was abandoned somewhere around 500 AD, and it remained unidentified until 1863 AD when Alexander Cunningham, the founder and the first Director General of the Archaeological Survey of India, realized that the directions to get to Taxila were being misinterpreted. The site was first excavated by John Marshall, who worked there for 20 years. This area has become famous because it holds the remains of several settlements, the earliest of which dates back to around 1000 BC. This location was designated as a World Heritage Site in 1980 for a multitude of reasons, but perhaps most importantly because the ruins of the 4 settlements throughout history reveal the pattern of urban evolution through more than 5 centuries, and the value of that kind of insight cannot be overstated. There are even accounts which claim that the University of Ancient Taxila was one of the earliest universities in the world, which is unbelievable. In our number 4 spot today we have Machu Picchu. For this one we have another one of the most famous and well-known lost cities, Machu Picchu. This site was built over 500 years ago, and it was once known as the lost city of the Inca until the modern discovery of it came in 1911 by archaeologist Hiram Bingham. Him and his team actually stumbled upon it almost accidentally while looking for another ancient city. Machu Picchu was built by the incredible Incas who have surprised us in our modern times many times with their unbelievable technology and abilities that they had all those years ago. It is believed that this place may have been built for the Inca emperor as a sort of estate. Machu Picchu was built in 1450, but it was abandoned about a century later at the time of the Spanish conquest. As of 2007, it has been voted one of the new 7 wonders of the world, and work continues to be done on it to maintain and restore this wonderful location. In our number 3 spot today we have Pompeii. One of the most famous lost cities ever, the Roman city of Pompeii was destroyed in 79 AD when the eruption of Mount Vesuvius exploded and volcanic ash was strewn about the city. Fast forward all the way to 1748 when the Duke of Naples had a summer palace built just 24 kilometers south of Naples on Italy's west coast. Through the construction, as those working on the palace began to dig, they started to come across buildings and streets, and from here, once news spread, people began to flock to see the area, and it was realized that what had been uncovered was the lost city of Pompeii. Throughout the Victorian times, people would come to see as more of this town was uncovered, and they found an amphitheater, a forum, houses and shops, everything you'd expect a town to have. This one was just ancient and buried. Now the ancient city of Pompeii is one of the most visited tourist attractions in the entire world, and excavations still continue on with secrets always being revealed. In our number 2 spot today we have Skara Brae. This was an area that is located in Scotland England, and it was found in an exceptionally surprising way. In 1850 there was a huge storm that hit Scotland, and it was so bad that around 200 people passed away from it. The next day, however, once the storm had passed, residents of the Orkney Isles began to notice that part of a cliff had dislodged, but it uncovered a sort of hidden settlement. Tests were able to date this site back from 3200 BC to 2200 BC, and it was shown to have been inhabited for about 600 years. There were round stone homes here, and the roofs were made out of whalebone and peat. The design of this little city suggested that there wasn't a hierarchy, but rather a group of people living peacefully as farmers, herdsmen, and traders. While this site is small, the houses are in quite great shape for the amount of time it's been. This settlement is Europe's most complete Neolithic village, and while it is older than Stonehenge and the Great Pyramids, it's been called the Scottish Pompeii because of how well preserved it is. No one is exactly sure why the residents of this village abandoned it, but it is likely that a change in climate is somewhat, if not fully responsible, and a storm might have been the reason those living here had to leave in haste, which is deduced by how all of their belongings were left here. In our number 1 spot today we have Corral. An American history professor named Paul Kosick was absolutely fascinated by ancient settlements, like I'm sure a lot of us are, but this passion led to him devoting much of his time to studying in Peru, which has such an incredibly rich history. In 1948, while in Peru, Paul made the discovery he had been waiting for when he came across the dry remains of an ancient city. The remains were carbon dated and placed to be about 5,000 years old. This city was once the home to around 3,000 inhabitants pre-Inca, and this was already a thriving location while the pyramids were being built. That is how old this settlement is. It appeared to be quite a peaceful place as there were no obvious signs of battles or weapons, but among the remains were homes, plazas, temples, and an amphitheater. It is said that the city was abandoned in 2000 BC, and in 2009 AD it was made a World Heritage Site.
Starting off this countdown, we have St. Elmo. St. Elmo, originally known as Forest City, was once a very popular mining town in Colorado. They had about 2,000 people living there when the mines opened. However, in the early 1920s, the mining industry started to decline, and slowly people packed up and left. However, it's not completely abandoned. Apparently, a couple of people still live there, but it's said that this place is haunted. In fact, it's said that it is home to some of the most paranormal activity in the state. Maybe it's a good spot for paranormal investigators, but not the best area to live in. I mean, I wouldn't want ghosts for neighbors. I mean, maybe I would, if they were friendly ghosts that kept noise levels down, then sure. Moving on at number 9, we have Krakow, Italy. Krakow, Italy was founded in the 8th century. However, it now lays abandoned due to a series of destructive natural disasters. The first natural disaster occurred in 1963 when a bunch of landslides affected the area. This was a result of the city being built on a cliff 1,300 feet off of the ground, and they also had some sewer and water system issues. Then in 1972, a flood struck the area and made the whole situation worse. Then in 1980, there was an earthquake that left the city completely abandoned. Now, the only people you may catch there are film crews. It's a very popular filming location. Some scenes in the film Quantum of Solace were shot there. But the area itself is considered a ticking time bomb, and it's surrounded by a locked gate. Making our way down the list at number 8, we have the city underwater. You aren't going to be able to visit this next city unless you have access to scuba diving gear, because this city is now completely submerged underwater. Built 1,300 years ago, the city I'm referring to is Shai-Chang, also referred to as Lion City, and it's located in eastern China. In 1959, the city was purposely flooded to build a hydroelectric power station. Now it's referred to as China's Atlantis. What's pretty fascinating is that although it lays about 40 meters underwater, the buildings are still in pretty good shape. The only change is instead of having human residents, it's home to tons of aquatic life. Moving on to number 7, we have Cahaba, Alabama. Cahaba in Alabama was abandoned after suffering from seasonal flooding. In 1865, Cahaba was destroyed by a flood and then abandoned. After the flood, living there became relatively impossible, so residents had no choice but to leave. But then in the 1920s, an archaeologist started to uncover and preserve some of the structures. Now it's said that the area is very haunted. In fact, it's known for a ghostly orb that can be seen seen floating around only to vanish into thin air. So the citizens may no longer live there, but ghosts certainly do. In our 6th spot, we have Varosha, Cyprus. In the early 70s, Varosha was one of the most popular tourist attractions in the world. That was until 1974 when Turkey invaded Cyprus. As a result, the residents there fled for their lives. Some residents have told stories of pots being left on their stoves or things still left in their ovens. It's quite sad how they were forced out of their own home and not allowed to return. Since 1974, Varosha has been abandoned and under control of the Turkish military. The whole area is now fenced off and under constant supervision. If you try to break in, well, the army patrols have orders to shoot on sight. So don't even try to visit the city, it definitely will end badly. It's just such a shame because the area is beautiful. In fact, actress Elizabeth Taylor loved going there. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with Plymouth, Montserrat. Plymouth, once the capital of Montserrat in the Caribbean, is often referred to as Pompeii of the Caribbean. Why? Well, in 1996, a volcano erupted, causing a mass evacuation. A few months later, some residents returned, but were welcomed with another eruption. On June 25th, 1997, this eruption killed 19 residents and destroyed the island's airport, trapping many others from fleeing. Eventually, Plymouth was evacuated again, but this time, no one dared to return. Everything was destroyed. In fact, 80% of the town is currently covered in ash. Pictures show homes completely buried with only their roofs sticking out. It's quite sad and scary. Moving on to number 4, we have Centralia. Centralia is an abandoned town located in Pennsylvania. It was once a populated town, however, a lot of residents were forced to leave due to unsafe living conditions. This all started after a coal fire ignited underground. This fire has been burning for almost 50 years. And it's predicted to continue on for another 200 years. As a result of this fire, tons of sinkholes have formed, hot smoke is released underground, and carbon monoxide has filled some residents' basements. In some parts of the town, it's said that the ground beneath them have reached up to 900 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about 400 degrees Celsius for us Canadians. Now, the US government is trying to erase any history of this city. They took away any signs directing people to this town, removed the town's zip code, and forced most of the residents out, except for 7 residents that are happy living in their deadly town and refuse to move out. In our 3rd spot, we have the Island of Dolls, aka the island I never want to visit. Located in Mexico City, the Island of Dolls is full of dolls hanging from trees and buildings. If that's not bad enough, these dolls have been there for so long that they are covered in dirt, cobwebs, and insects, making them look that much more terrifying. Now, you're probably wondering how this place came to be. Clearly, it's not Annabelle or Chucky's private island resort, though it could be. So back in the 1950s, a man named Don Julian started to hang dolls from trees as a way to protect himself against evil spirits. Paranormal things kept happening to him there, so he would hang dolls everywhere with the idea that they would scare the souls of the deceased. He spent more than 50 years hanging dolls. Some were found in the garbage, some were missing limbs. Did not matter. If it was a doll, it got hung up all around the island. Now it's abandoned and looks like something straight out of a horror movie. Coming in at number 2, we have Wittenoom, Australia. Located north-northeast of Perth, Australia, Wittenoom is considered one of Australia's deadliest towns. And you would think it would have to do with Australia's massive and deadly insects, but surprisingly not. In fact, it's because of its blue asbestos. In 1937, blue asbestos was discovered in the city's gorge. Years later, miners were unearthing tons of asbestos from the ground. It wasn't until 1978 that the government started pushing people out of their homes. They realized how deadly it was for them to be living there. It was increasing their risk for cancer. And in some cases, people were already developing lung cancer just from living there. It would cost the town about $2.43 million to rid the town of asbestos. So instead of doing that, they just shut the town down completely. In 2006, the government turned off the power to the town and had its name removed from maps and road signs. In fact, all roads that once led to the town are now closed off. If you do choose to enter the town, you will find tons of huge warning signs advising you to turn back. And in our number 1 spot, we have Pripyat, Ukraine. This is probably the most famous abandoned city on the list. So Pripyat was a city in Ukraine that had a population of 49,000 individuals. However, on April 27, 1986, all residents were forced to evacuate following the Chernobyl disaster. Pripyat was the most affected by the Chernobyl nuclear disaster since they were the closest to the power plant. They were the ones most exposed to the radioactive chemicals. A once beautiful city was left abandoned in just 3 hours. Due to the radiation, the city will be left untouched for thousands of more years until it's safe enough to return. Starting off this countdown, we have Port Royal, Jamaica. Port Royal was once known as the wickedest city on earth. It was home to real-life Pirates of the Caribbean. It had a population of over 7,000 people. That was until 1692. On June 7th of that year, a massive earthquake caused a deadly tsunami to strike the land. 2,000 people sunk along with the entire city. People thought that this was done by God to try and get rid of the pirates, but honestly, those that survived just moved further up the coast. The city was forgotten about until the 1950s, when underwater excavations caused the city to become rediscovered. Today, this city is considered one of the best preserved underwater cities in the world. In our 9th spot today, we have Lion City. The Lion City, or Shaicheng, is a 1,300-year-old city located in Eastern Europe that now lies completely underwater. But it wasn't always like that. In the late 1950s, the city was purposely flooded to build a hydroelectric power station in the area. What's pretty fascinating is that although it lays about 40 meters underwater, the buildings are still in pretty good shape. The only change is instead of having human residents, it's now home to tons of aquatic life. Now, it laid untouched until 2001 when it was rediscovered. Now, you may be wondering, why was it given the name Lion City? And that's because there are a number of carved lions featured in the city, but they also have carved dragons and phoenixes there as well. Sadly, only experienced divers are permitted to explore the city. That's because of the depth and temperature and low visibility down there. But alas, you can still see how cool it is by Googling images of it. And honestly, it's quite beautiful. In our 8th spot today, we have the Mulifanua site. Very little information is known about this next city. Located in Samoa, this city was discovered in the 1970s. Basically, a bunch of pottery shards were found and researchers were like, dude, there's probably more down there. And then they were right. In the end, they found thousands of pieces of pottery. But not only that, they found the remnants of a village. The village dates back to around 800 BC. In fact, it's considered one of the largest villages in the area. Like I said though, not much is known about this village, making it quite the mystery. In our 7th spot, we have Huanaco, Bolivia. Back in the day, residents in the area were told great stories of a long-lost underwater city, much like Atlantis. They said the city contained heaps of Spanish gold. And looks like part of the story was actually true. Recently, divers in the area found ruins of an ancient temple complex. This temple is said to be more than 1,500 years old. More than 200 dives have taken place to get a better understanding of this ancient city. Who knows though, maybe there is gold and other priceless artifacts buried around there somewhere. Coming in at number 6, we have Pavlopetri, Greece. Back in 1967, an oceanographer discovered a number of ancient ruins underwater in southwestern Greece. What he didn't realize is that later this would lead to him finding an ancient underground town. In fact, this is considered the oldest underwater city. It dates all the way back to the Bronze Age. It was believed to have been above water from the 3rd millennium until 1100 BC. What's crazy is that there's almost an entire complete city underwater. You got streets, buildings, churches, gardens, tombs, you name it. It really is breathtaking. Nowadays, they created a 3D image of what this city might have once looked like. And it's pretty freaking cool if you ask me. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with Japan's Atlantis, aka the sunken city of Yonaguni. Just off the coast of Yonaguni lies a city completely sunken underwater. There are complete pyramids, ruins of a castle, structures etched with faces, and rock sculptures that look like animals, all underwater. Every structure has such intricate design and detail. Like there's a monument made up of a series of rock formations, including carved steps, stone pillars, and a triangular formation. Now, what's weird is that we don't know the origins of this mysterious city. It's theorized that a terrible earthquake caused the city to be engulfed by the water, but we don't know for sure. To this day, this city has left experts baffled. It's one of Japan's greatest unsolved mysteries. Moving on to number 4, we have Villa Apician. Located in Argentina, this was a thriving city in the 1970s. It was home to about 500 residents, and they had about 300 businesses there. That was until the late 1980s when it sank completely underwater. During that time, they were receiving far more rain than usual. Soon, the lake around them began to swell. It ended up breaking the dam and sinking the entire city. In 1993, the town was about 33 feet underwater. That was until 2009, when some of the water receded and part of the town became visible again. Old rusted cars and debris were then exposed out of water. But of course, most of the town will continue to remain underwater, and the parts exposed will probably be flooded over again. Moving on to number 3, we have Atlit Yam. Located off the coast of Atlit, Israel, this city is said to be between 8,300 to 8,900 years old. It was first discovered in 1984 by a marine archaeologist, Ehud Galili. Since then, a number of expeditions have taken place in order to unearth this city. The city is about 10 meters below sea level and covers an area of 40,000 square meters. What's fascinating about this place is that right in the middle, it has this massive 10-acre stone circle thing. We don't know what's up with that, but many believe it might have been used for some kind of ritual. Over the years, a number of houses, graves, and wells have been discovered in this city. Scientists believe that the city was struck by a tsunami which caused a volcanic eruption, causing the city to flood and then sink. In our second spot, we have Dwarka, India. Back in the day, there was a legend that was passed down about a city laying 131 feet below the ocean. This was a legend until the 2000s when it came to life. The story of this magical city everyone had been told was indeed real. Since then, a number of ancient artifacts have been unearthed in this city, including pottery and sculptures. Also, they found a number of human bones. After running carbon dating tests on it, it revealed that the city could be almost 10,000 years old. It truly is incredible. Again, we don't know how the city came to be or what happened to it. And in our number 1 spot today, we have Heraklion, Egypt. Located just northwest of Alexandria is the sunken city of Heraklion, and is referred to as Egypt's Atlantis. It lay lost under the sea until the early 2000s. A group of divers were working off the Egyptian coast when they found a large fragment of rock under the seabed, or so they thought. It was just a rock. When they brought it out of the water, they found it to be a sculpture of the Egyptian god of fertility. After this discovery, they madly went to work exploring the area. They ended up discovering pieces of pottery, ancient coins, jewelry, busts, and ruins of a temple. Just tons and tons of priceless artifacts. How the city ended up underwater is still a mystery. One theory, though, is that it had to do with the rising sea levels and crumbling foundations of the city, causing it to slide into the Mediterranean Sea. Now, I'm not trying to pick favorites, but out of all the places on today's list, this is the one that I'd love to visit.
The lost city of Aztlan brings us to number 10. Many people believe that the missing island of Aztlan is where the Aztec people began to form as a civilization prior to migrating to Mexico. There were a lot of tribes and hunters and gatherers, and Aztec people ruled a large empire in central and southern Mexico in the 15th and early 16th century. Since then, we have gathered a ton of information about how they used to to live and what they accomplished, but little is known about their origin story. Astounded is believed to be a mystical land, but a ton of others believe that this location exists and one day we will physically find it. There have been countless searches for this island, but we haven't been able to find it yet. If the lost city of Astounded is found, we would uncover an insane amount of history and culture. Well, you know what, I hope this day comes sooner than later. Number 9 takes us over to Lion City in China. This place is often referred to as China's Atlantis City, and that's because this lost city is sitting at the bottom of a lake. This was once a thriving city that was known all over China. It can only be visited if you plummet 100 feet below sea level. And no, this city wasn't lost due to natural causes. This ancient city disappeared due to hands of humans. Although it sits deep underwater, it's still miraculously fully preserved. All of its structures, statues, memorials, and archways are still perfectly intact. It was rediscovered about 2 decades ago, and since then divers have been repeatedly making trips below to the surface to marvel at this beautiful lost city. Dwarka brings us to number 8. According to the local folklore in India, this was the hometown of Lord Krishna, and this place was believed to be an old wives' tale until the ruins of the city were discovered 131 feet below the ocean. These amazing ruins were found beneath the surface of modern day Dwarka, and the beauty of this city has baffled everyone, including experts. Marine archaeologists have found sandstone walls, a grid of streets, and remains of a seaport. They believe that the city was built 9,000 years ago. It's just amazing that we were able to discover the city that seemed like it only existed in folklore. I wonder what else is out there just waiting to be discovered. The medieval city of Jolfur is in at number 7. It's believed that Jolfur exists somewhere in the United Arab Emirates, and Jolfur used to be a thriving city for thousands of years. It acted as a port and commercial center before it fell into ruins and disappeared from history for almost 2 centuries. Part of the city was actually discovered by archaeologists in the 1960s, but historians are still baffled by the fact that most of Jolfur still remains hidden under the sand dunes. Maybe one day we'll be able to excavate the entire city and explore Jolfur even deeper. The lost city of the Z climbs onto this list at number 6. This highly mysterious city is believed to be somewhere in the jungles of Brazil. Apparently it is composed of a complex civilization, but because it is so isolated, it has never been properly documented or reported on. In 1925, an explorer named Percy Fawcett headed towards the jungles of Brazil to find this lost city called Z. But once his expedition started, his team vanished without a trace while searching for it. Despite countless rescue missions, Fawcett and his team were never found, and this location still remains a mystery to this day. I'm guessing with the wildfires in the Amazon, this city could have been destroyed, but hopefully one day the legendary city of Z will be found. Number 5 brings us to Angkor. Located deep within the Cambodian jungle, there is a huge medieval city that was hidden from us for centuries. But thanks to new archaeological tools and techniques, we are now able to explore this once lost city. It took over a century of grueling hard work to fill in the map, but now the lost city of Angkor is slowly beginning to reappear, but there are still a ton of blanks that need to be filled in. From what we have studied, Angkor has a ton of secrets, including an elaborate network of temples, boulevards, and it has a bunch of sophisticated waterways that spread across the city. I'm so curious to know what this city was like centuries ago. I find this stuff so interesting because, well, we can really evaluate how we've evolved and how architecture has changed throughout time. I mean, I went to school for architect, and so I'm just so fascinated with buildings. Diving down into number 4, we have the city of Atlantis. It was first mentioned by the ancient Greek philosopher Plato more than 2,300 years ago. Atlantis is one of the oldest and greatest mysteries in the world today. According to Plato, this kingdom existed 9,000 years before his time, and one day it mysteriously just disappeared. Even after spending years of researching Atlantis, the truth about this strange city remains a mystery, and that is why we are so fascinated with finding its location. So where could it be? It's believed that the city sunk into the the sea after an earthquake or a tsunami somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean, but others believe that Atlantis is just a myth. As of today, there is no scientific evidence that proves, whether or not this mysterious city exists, but maybe Atlantis is somewhere at the bottom of the sea just waiting to be rediscovered. Let me know what you guys think. I think Atlantis is real. The lost land of Lyonese comes onto this list next up at number 3. There's a strong belief that this lost city is nothing more than a legend or myth, but there's still a small chance that it could be a reality. It is said that the city disappeared when it completely sunk into the ocean on November 11, 1099. If this mysterious city does exist, it would be quite large. Apparently, it contained 140 villages and churches, but thanks to a massive flood, the entire village was swallowed and engulfed in water. It is said that all the people and animals living on the land drowned, and once it was completely immersed in water, the land never re-emerged. There is evidence that shows that the sea levels back then would be considerably lower, so it is very possible that the city could have been occupied by humans. But since this city appears to be a legend, well, this location remains a mystery. A sacred city comes in at number 2. Dvaraka was recently rediscovered in the 1980s by scientists. The city is said to be a Hindu, Jainist, and a Buddhist sacred city that forms one of the 7 sacred cities of Hinduism. According to the ancient legend, this city was destroyed during a huge battle between Krishna and King Asalva. The city was apparently destroyed by blasts of energy, and it was never seen again. That is until it was rediscovered by scientists, and they determined that the city was actually located where the legend described it to be. That is absolutely insane. Well, apparently this city could have been built around 9,000 years ago. I mean, how do people even know information like that? And if that's the case, this would make it one of the oldest cities on Earth. El Dorado is in at number 1. El Dorado is known as the lost city of gold. Now this is a city I want to find. It is believed to be located in the region of the Orinoco and the Amazon rivers. For hundreds of years, historians and treasure hunters have been constantly looking for the lost city of gold. And who could really blame them? Apparently it is filled with gold and other priceless jewels and treasures. I'm imagining that it looks like the Cave of Wonders, in Aladdin. But sadly the city of gold remains a mystery, and there's no physical evidence that this place actually exists. And I'm sure if someone found it, they're not going to tell people about it, and it probably took all the gold. They're selling it on the black market, maybe a few coins on eBay or Amazon. Can you sell money on Amazon? I don't know. I'm gonna search.